Hi, everyone. My name is Evelyn Briones, and I'm here with CPD. We're hosting the Welcome to Networking at noon. I can let my colleagues present themselves.
I'll go first. I'm Alicia Alex. I'm Associate Director in Career and Professional Development. Really happy to see you all here today, and I will pass it over to Roxanne.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roxanne Fenton. I'm the manager in Career and Professional Development, and networking makes me nervous, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved in this workshop for you all. So I'm excited for what we're going to do today. Go ahead, Evelyn. I am still letting people in. I'm also kind of running things behind the scenes, so if I look momentarily distracted, that would be why.
Thanks, Roxanne. So as we move to the next slide, we see that today's agenda is going to be defining what networking is. And yes, like Roxanne mentioned, networking can be awkward, scary, and it has a lot of emotions behind it. But we're going to learn what networking is and the benefits of networking. What can networking look like? So we'll give you examples of what it is and mapping your network. So who is in your network? How can you make those connections and move along in your networking process? Learning ways to connect with others. So for example, social media and more. How to start a conversation. So that might be the hardest part, but we're here to support and really help you with that process. And at the end of today, we'll have an activity, networking with your peers. So even attending today's session is networking, getting to know people. As we go to the next slide, we'll see that you can network by just saying hello in the chat. So if you want to drop in your name, your pronouns, your major, your department, your favorite hot beverage. I know it's pretty sunny outside, so maybe not hot. If it's cold, favorite cold beverage, feel free to put that in the chat. So even when you are in a Zoom room and you're communicating through the chat, that's a way to network. I know Alicia earlier dropped in a couple things in the chat, Roxanne did as well. So those are ways that you can connect with others as you are using Zoom or online resources. So if we move to the next, if you want to drop in your name in the chat, feel free to do so. We want to see who's in the room. So I see Alicia dropped in her name. You can probably hear the train in the background. So you can drop a hello, a hi. So I see Sean dropped in something in the chat. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks, Emily. So as we continue the presentation, feel free to drop in your name, your department, and we'll move along. Okay, so as we move to the next slide, we see that we want to ask you a quick question. So the question is, what is networking? And as you're looking at what is networking, you can pick multiple, and I'll give you a moment to pick that. Great. As you're answering those questions, I do see illustration, students in here, transportation design, tea. I love drinking tea. That's awesome. Matcha lattes. Matcha is the best. It does give you a lot of energy. It keeps me up. So that's a great way to have your caffeine. Did anyone say coffee?
I said coffee with creamer.
Okay, great. Coffee lovers. Water. So we see a lot of different things. So now I will end the poll and I will share the results. So we see that what is networking? So yes, all of the above. Networking is really building those relationships and establishing long rapport with people. sharing resources, being able to learn from people, creatives in your industry, meeting new people. All of these are networking, and there's no right way to do networking. And it's not about just finding a job or finding a resource, but it's more about building a relationship with people. So meeting new people is a great way to even network. Today in this session, you will all have the opportunity to network as well. And I'll move it on to the next slide.
Yeah, so Evelyn mentioned that networking is building relationships, and that's really a big takeaway that we want to give you, is that it's that simple. And it's that, relationships are ongoing, so networking is ongoing. And anytime you're building relationships, you're building your network. And it's a mutual, relationships go both ways. So it's not only what you can get from people in your network, but also what you can give to people in your network. And a really great way to get over some of the awkwardness of talking to people, of getting to know people, new people, and building new connections is to be curious about other people. I think I used to have a colleague who was really, really good at this, and she could draw anyone out because she just loved to learn about them and to ask questions about them, and people really respond well to that. So building relationships and being curious. And you may not realize that you are already networking in things that you do. So talking to people in your classes, including your faculty. Hopefully, I know it's been a little more challenging in the pandemic with virtual classes, but having conversations with your faculty members, getting to know them, joining clubs on campus, and many clubs have still been active even as we've been virtual. Taking part in CPD's mentorship program, that's maybe a little more obvious networking, but we'll be having more information about that in April, and applications will be open in the summer for next fall. And commenting on people's work online. These are all things that you might already be doing that are networking.
How many of you have heard of the 6 degrees of separation? You can raise your hand or put a thumbs up, or anything. It's okay if you haven't heard of it. I see Alicia with her hand up. So the 6 degrees of separation states that you can meet anyone in the world with a maximum of 6 people or fewer. And this means through family members, through colleagues, through friends, you name it. So it's important to really know who's in your bubble or who's outside your bubble. So for example, you as a student, you'll be in the middle, and then seeing how your connection. So thinking about identifying who is someone that is in your network. Number 2, writing down the names of people who are in your network. And number 3, who does your network know? So in this visual, you can see you. And then usually when I was a student, I remember having faculty, classmates, supervisors, family, friends, social media, community involvements, colleagues. So through all of these people that are surrounding you, what does it mean? What connections can you make from those who surround you? So for example, through social media, you can comment or like posts. You can DM someone on Instagram or like their Facebook post. Build online communities. So I know that Facebook has communities and Instagram has them as well. Slack is another great way. So thinking about how can you use these tools or these different people and groups in your network to communicate and build from there. Colleagues, you can share resources with them, contacts, information. With faculty, you can attend office hours. And this is a perfect time to learn from industry insights. You can learn from events and potential contacts. Classmates, it's a great way to really interact and collaborate and sponsor projects. You can ask them about their internship. How is your internship at Pixar going? Think about ways that you can communicate with your supervisor to gain industry insights. They most likely have more experience than you, so they can really give you a sense of an industry insight, let you know about job opportunities, and even professional development. So these are some ways that you can communicate with people around you and therefore move along your networking.
Thanks, Evelyn. And so now that you kind of have this general sense of what networking is and how to start thinking about the people already in your network, so really utilizing that map to start thinking like, man, who am I even connected with already? Like my friends, great. My friend knows this friend owns a gallery, kind of putting those connections together of who is even around you to begin connecting with. I want to talk a little bit about a next step of like where and how to actually start doing that connecting. And Evelyn touched on this a little bit, but we'll just talk about how to start connecting with your community, both online and offline. And again, some of these you might already be doing and not thinking about it as networking, but these are all forms of just building your community, building your connections, building relationships. So let's start with online networking. LinkedIn is a tool that we love. Oftentimes we think about it as a place to find opportunities, find jobs, promote ourselves, but it actually is a really great place to build community. That LinkedIn feed is now a pretty lively place where people are sharing a lot about their lives. I think it really reminds me about what Facebook used to be, where there was kind of this active feed. And the great thing is it's all kind of centered around their professional lives. So you get a sense of where people are working, their achievements. There's a lot of artists and designers on LinkedIn that you can interact with. And it's just a really necessary tool as you start thinking about growing your professional community. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, social media, these are platforms you're probably already on. This is a great way to start networking with other creative professionals, colleagues, individuals outside of the school and the community that you're already in. It's a great way to find new artists that you really love, get inspired by their work, find these niche communities of individuals doing work that you love or that have interest in what you do. And you can really utilize it by sharing their work, commenting on it, liking it, and engaging in this way. That is a very great way to network. Facebook, again, I know that the way we use Facebook has really evolved over the last decade, maybe, but I will say that Facebook groups are still very alive and well. And I think there's some that are just so beneficial. I'm in like a women in art business group that I find so helpful. There are a ton, like think about it as just like an open forum where you can kind of grow and learn from a community based around interests. That's a great way to network. Of course, Discord and Slack. I think Discord is really great in this way too. There's a lot of open communities you can join. To me, it's almost like the newer Facebook groups that are way more interactive, really centered around a niche interest. I think that's an excellent way to network. Slack communities, oftentimes, if you go to a convention or a zine fest or Comic-Con, oftentimes some of these events will have satellite Slack communities that you can join while you're at the event or afterwards to stay connected. I think that's excellent. And then of course, Behance or Dribbble. So these are platforms that we think of as just a place to house our work, but there is a pretty live community happening there where you're commenting on other people's work, you're sharing other people's work. There's sort of a share the love mentality there. And it's also how people are finding out about your work. So that's a way to grow your network outside, again, of your bubble. So next we'll talk about in-person networking, which sometimes is the most intimidating form of networking. I feel this way. I think if you're naturally an introverted person, you might feel this way, but also a really crucial part of building your community. And again, you might just be doing some of these things as a person that's existing in the world already. So things like attending a workshop and panel, you're here in this room today, you're networking with us, you're networking with each other, whether you feel like it or not. That's exactly what's happening. Going to gallery openings, again, going to art book fairs, going to community art events. These are just ways to connect with the community. Even if you just have one quick conversation with someone there, that's growing your network. You start to see a lot of the same people at a lot of these same events. That will help grow your network. Joining professional organizations like AIGA or Women in Animation. CPD has a really wonderful list of these on our website. But if you are interested in really joining a group, think about it almost like a professional club. Where you can, again, gather, share resources, learn. A lot of times they put on events in the city. This is just a great way to make new friends, kind of connect on interests, and grow your creative community. And then again, similar to community art events, but attending professionally oriented events, so like conferences, art fairs, things related to maybe the career you want to go into, all great ways to connect in person and fun ways to connect in person. And then of course, striking up a conversation with someone new and start with those people around you. So people in a Zoom room that you're in, a class, talk to someone you've never talked to, create a side project with someone. Collaboration is a great way for artists to grow their network. So just a few ways to kind of expand our thinking on what is networking, how do you build community beyond just maybe what we think of as networking and having to go to a networking event and meet someone. But I think it can happen organically, and it can happen throughout your entire being, both online and in person. And we'll go to the next slide. So I also think, like, now that you're starting to think about how to build your creative community, I want to talk through some tips for approaching building your creative community in this way. So first and foremost, as you're starting to meet new people, you want to cultivate those relationships. So the same way you would with a friendship or a family member, relationships take work, and this is the same with a community relationship, right? So both on and offline, you can strike up conversation, comment on social profiles. You kind of want to just make sure that you're invested and be consistent in your communication. It's oftentimes not enough to just tweet back and forth. You could do that forever. And yes, that's a form of community, but it actually is great if you can transform that community into something tangible. And a good example of this is throughout the pandemic, have made friends with a designer on Instagram that I just loved her work. I started following her. We had a lot in common. We were both Greek. We started talking about that in DMs, and we just recently met up for coffee, and it's a new friend that I made. And so that's a really great way to kind of long-term cultivate these relationships. Remember to give and take in these relationships. So sometimes when you think about networking, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is like pushing your own agenda too soon. You're like, I need a job. I'm going to ask for a job. I'm going to ask about this opportunity. But by observing and listening, you'll kind of be able to survey who's in front of you, what they might need from you. And so essentially you want to make sure that you're forming these organic relationships, that you're listening to the other person. And that is really going to create a relationship that's super fruitful in that way. And then, of course, just keeping your eyes and ears open for opportunities. So one of the best ways to learn about new job opportunities, to learn about a gallery that's looking for artists, to learn about a comic book artist that's hiring on assistants, is to really keep your ears open for these opportunities as you're having these conversations, and to also be vocal with your creative community about what you're looking for. This is something that I've seen to be super beneficial, even in my own creative community, of people really reaching out and saying, hey, I'm looking for a new opportunity in this space. Do you know of anything? Or just being at an event and overhearing that someone is building this thing and they need artists. So just kind of keeping your eyes and ears open as you are in these places. And then again, this goes back to cultivating relationships, but really nurturing those connections. So showing up at events in the community, sending a quick note to say how much you loved the work they presented in class, following up in personal emails, sending a holiday card, sending a thank you note to a supervisor that you worked with, just kind of really making sure that you're nurturing all of these connections, because you're working hard to build your creative community and you want to make sure that they're feeling invested, and vice versa. So now, all of the things I talked about require you to first and foremost talk to somebody new. This is how you are going to even begin building your community at all. And again, I know that can seem awkward and scary, so I'm going to hand it over to Roxanne, who's going to help us all begin a conversation like an absolute pro.
Hi, I'm Roxanne. It's nice to meet you. That was a conversation starter. A little obvious, but maybe a little more focused on in-person interaction, but just the idea of introducing yourself. That's why we had you all introduce yourselves in the chat when we started, is a way to get a little bit of knowledge out there, get the conversation started. And what I've got are some examples for you of ways that you can start a conversation or build the opening steps of a conversation. And I've broken them into categories so that you can think about the fact that there are lots of different ways to get talking with someone. So our first category is compliments. You want to compliment something someone has chosen, so not so much their, the features that they were born with, but, their shoes, their glasses, their color, the colors in their outfit, jewelry they might be wearing. If someone's got a Zoom background on that you wonder if they did the artwork for. This is complimenting work online. This is a lot of, that's really the great way to start in those online interactions. People love to get compliments, even if it makes them slightly uncomfortable sometimes, but I think really ultimately people love when you compliment them, and that's a great way to get started. If you're at an event, the classic small talk topics, the weather, the traffic, the crowd at the event, the line you're standing in, maybe you're standing in line for the bathroom. You can always chat about those things. So Evelyn started out, we asked you about a hot beverage, but Evelyn noted that it's pretty warm out today. So maybe you wanted to do a cold beverage instead. We live in Southern California. Anytime you go to an in-person event, you can always talk about the traffic, and everybody knows that and kind of accepts that. If you're at an event with food, maybe not the most common thing right now, but asking, someone who's already got food on their plate, what they would recommend. These are all evergreen topics. Everybody understands that you're making a connection. They're really useful. You can ask other questions about the event or the context that you're in. Again, just like those evergreen topics, you're asking about what's right in front of you. You don't have to come up with anything that you're pulling out of thin air. You're just taking the circumstances that you're in and asking questions. So, have you been here before? If you're at an art event, are you familiar with the artist? What brought someone to the event, how they heard about the event, what they thought about the speaker, if there was a speaker at an event. Again, things that are right there. And you could even use these online, some of them, especially if you have a chance in breakout rooms to talk. You can ask people questions about their job, about the work that they do every day. So what do they like about it? What role are they in? How did they get there? What do they hope to achieve? What are their goals? That's maybe a little bit deeper question. These are also great questions for outreach on LinkedIn or on social media for that online piece of getting a conversation started. Another category, questions about art and design projects. Again, these can work in person if you're at an art event or an industry event. They can work online, and you can adapt them. You can use them with your classmates. Do you have any passion or personal projects you're working online at now? If you've met someone in person, do they post their work online anywhere? That's a good way to get connected with them on social media to kind of continue that connection. So you can always ask about the art, about the design work that someone does. And then finally, you can ask general questions about about the person and their interests. What's keeping you busy these days? One that comes up a lot when I talk to people is, when was the last time you saw a movie in a theater? People have different tolerances for that these days. So some people saw a movie last week. For some people, it's been 2 years. Podcasts are really popular. during the pandemic, everybody's been really attached to their Netflix queue. So what are you watching? What are you enjoying? Pets. I have a new puppy who's 6 months old. I love to talk about my puppy. So that's a great one to ask about. Just those general conversation questions. So now that we've gone through kind of what networking is, how you might already be doing it, how to build your network, and some ways to get started, it's your turn. And we really wanted to give you a chance to practice, to put in to practice what we've been talking about in a fun, low pressure way. So we are going to put you in breakout rooms. I'm just going to randomly assign them. And I'm going to put in the chat some of those conversation starters that I just shared. And I have to find my chat window. There it is. To give you something to base it off of. And this is just going to give you practice with that initial meeting with a new person. Some of you may know each other, but probably most of you don't. And we're going to do this a few times so that you get to network and build your connection with people now. So feel free to exchange contact info during these sessions. Feel free to chat with each other. The breakout rooms are going to assign randomly, and it is possible we have a reasonably small room that you'll get reassigned with someone. So if you get reassigned to the person the second time, you can just deepen the conversation and ask more questions. And Alicia and Evelyn will also be participating, so you may get a chance to network with them. All right, so I am going to go ahead and put you in breakout rooms, and we'll let this go for 2, maybe 3 minutes. So you have enough time to have a little bit of a chat, but not too long. And there we go. So go ahead and join. It looks like we may have some rooms with 3 people in it. That's perfectly fine. And I'll let you know when I'm going to bring you back so that you can wrap up your conversation. All right. Any questions before I send you all off?
It's going to be fun.
And I am going to stop the recording.